The whole point of composition is to give you the opportunity to be the composer, using all the tools that you have available. Yes, of course, composition is about how you arrange things in the viewfinder, but it goes a little bit further. Remember the superpowers that shutters and apertures have. Remember the love affair that's going on between focal length and composition. Remember that exposure itself, how bright or dark your pictures are, arguing with your light meter, can also be said to be a part of your composition, how you want a shot to look. And I got a great exercise for you that's such good fun, and it's going to help you understand more about how these things come together. So grab a household item, something. I'm going to use a teapot and just pop it on here. You can do this in your garden, your kitchen, your living room, your shed, I don't care, the park. Just find something every day, something from your own home. Let's just make a bit of space here. And leave it pretty much in the same place, but just see how many different compositions you can find with that thing in that one place, using all those great ingredients we've got. I got my 18 to 55mm lens on. It's my go-to, oh, that's quite good, just by accident. It's my go-to lens, I love it. I love my 18 to 55. What are we on? We're on about 25mm. That was complete fluke. I just picked up the camera and it just happened to be like that. Look at that. We have got, I think, a great composition. Look at those settings. It says that I'm overexposed, but why would that be? There's all that brightness in the background. I'm arguing with my light meter because the histogram says to me that looks about right. I kind of like that. Teapot is a little bit in the middle. It's always worth doing something slightly different to see how it will look. I quite like that. How about if we move it over to the side? Now watch how much movement there is in me. So little. Look, as we're moving the teapot a little bit. And I kind of like that, just as a composition too. But what about losing a little bit of what's going on at the back of the room? Well, focal length. It loves composition, doesn't it? Let's just extend that. Look, just a bit. How much have I extended that? I've gone from about 25 to about 37. That's all. Such a small change. Let's get that lined up again. I love the way it kind of contrasts against the light at the other end of the room. Now look, into the back of the room. Look, if I can get my finger there, look at this upright going on there. Because it's just there, isn't it? Hard against the edge. If you don't pay attention and look all around the viewfinder and you just concentrate on the subject, you're in danger of ending up with that. Or something, you know, kind of just not nice, or it's not quite straight. Always look all the way around the viewfinder. Pay attention to everything. What about if we extend that focal length a bit further? Bring the light a little bit closer in. That's quite nice, isn't it? I'm not so sure I like the light so close to the spout. How can we change that? I want to go this way. Look. Look how little I've just moved to change that. And that's quite a nice little composition. So simple. How would it look if we go wider? Let's use a little bit of the magic of focal length and come into here. Make the room bigger. Make it look just a little bit more wacky. You see, just moving the camera up and down changes things. I don't like the light being above the teapot spout. Wow, let's just cheat. How's that? Move to the right. There it is. We've got another different look. I can't help but wonder how this would look from the other end of the room with a much longer lens. 55 to 200 fitted. How's that going to look? Something to bear in mind. Remember, think, we don't want to get camera shake, do we? We need to make sure our shutter speed's fast enough. So in this case, I'm going to make sure my shutter speed is at least a 250th of a second. What are we going to have to do to counteract that? Increase the ISO, because I've already got the widest aperture. Here we go. Look, light meter, I'm arguing a little bit. That's quite nice. It's funny, isn't it? These things have just sort of worked without trying, and that is often the case. This is why you should always experiment. Right, look, I'm just going to focus on the teapot. What have I done? I've moved. That's better. Yeah, it's okay, but it's kind of lost a bit in the background, isn't it? What about if we move? I want to get rid of that bright window. Look, Everything's moving, everything's changing. We got the lamp in shot. Come around here. Oh, I quite like that because there's something else exciting happening here too. Look, let's go a bit lower. Let's get the lamp and the teapot closer. That's a bit more interesting. Just there. Notice, look, the gap between the teapot and the lamp. As I come down here, they become closer together. It's a little bit more unusual, isn't it? If I come up, look, they're getting further apart. In fact, if you go far enough, we can even lose the lamp without doing anything else. This is the dance of composition. It's just so great. I kind of like that, and I think from here, I like making the teapot a little smaller, seeing a bit more room. I quite like the angle of this. No, you can't see what I'm pointing at. Just shut up, Brown, and take the picture. This is such fun doing this. What about viewing it in a completely different way? I'm going to have a little play with a much, much wider angle lens. 10 to 20mm lens fitted. Yes, I know, you just saw a light. That's because Joe's video camera, it needs a little bit of help. Otherwise, we'd have to put the gain up through the roof, the equivalent of ISO, just like I'm doing on this. And you don't want to look at a gainy picture, do you? No, of course you don't. So, look, wide angle. Oh, see again, look, we're changing the viewpoint. We're going down low here. What happens if I come a little bit closer? Oh, that's nice. Let's get shorter and closer. In fact, I'm even going to use a little bit, I think, of the video light. But I'm not, because one, it won't focus that close, and two, my exposure award's getting in the way. I can't be bothered to move it. Look, that's kind of interesting. How often do you see a teapot from that angle? What would happen if we increased our depth of field and made the background sharper, and we kind of made even the 20mm a little bit longer? See, that's kind of interesting, I think, as a composition. How would that look if we saw more background? Let's make the aperture smaller. We're going to make our tap much smaller. That's going to let in less light. We don't want to get camera shake, but I'm on a shorter lens now, so, well, 24mm, if I've got a 30th of a second, I'll be fine. We still need to get that ISO a little bit higher. We want this a bit brighter because we're using a very small aperture. Look, you see, we're just dancing with these controls. Let's just go that way a bit, see what it looks like. With the back of the room sharp, I don't think it works quite so well, does it? Let's go back to having a shallow depth of field. Right, it's all brightened up, isn't it? Let's do it with the ISO. Let's take that all the way down until we got the exposure about where I want it. And I think I'm going to argue with my light meter and say I want it a bit brighter than you think it should be. So look, there are so many things we can do. Let's go really wide. Let's get really close. Look at the dynamism of that. Look how it is changing the shape and feel of the teapot. What if we come down low with a very wide and look up at it? I don't like it. What if we start tilting the camera on purpose? That's kind of interesting, but we need to increase the focal length again. You see, this is all a dance. This is playing with everything. Now, if we line up the line of the window on the right, yes, it's a purpose tilt. Does it work? Not really. How about looking at it from a completely different angle? Because this would work here, right? We've got that angle here. Down below there, we have got, look, we've got this darker surface. How about if you think about using this corner as something a little more graphic? Let's just put the teapot about there. And look, with the lens very short, we've got too much in really, but you can see how this is kind of working, because how often do you look at a teapot like that? Do we want those chairs? No. So just change the composition. Look, a little bit of a movement to the right, like that. That's quite interesting, because it's picking up a little bit of what's on the floor over there in the cupboards. I'm going to extend that focal length a bit, focus on the teapot. I think the exposure's too much, so I'm just going to up the shutter speed a touch, so less chance of wobble. That's better. See, you just keep an eye on these things. I quite like that. Get it straight. It's just eye-catching, a little bit unusual, isn't it? You can play around like this for hours, and I really, really want you to do this. You can do it anywhere. Play with all those amazing tools that you've got, just find something ordinary. See if you can find a way to make it extraordinary. This is the choreography of composition. This is blending those things together, but also dancing and moving. Remember, these little movements, they make a world of difference. Let's talk about power in a picture and how that relates to composition. Camera angle. Because as you change that camera angle, you can change the power dynamic within an image. Carl and I, we're about the same height, we're stood next to each other, our eye level is about the same. And when that eye level is the same, it's an equal thing. But when you change it and start to alter that eye level, the power dynamic completely changes. For example, I'm going to go up on the step and do a shot looking down at Carl from here. Just line it up a bit, make sure I've got my exposure right. That will do nicely. And now we're looking down at Carl. If we swap places, and Carl goes up on the step, that's about right. I'm going to get really, really low down here somewhere. Shoot a picture from this angle, and suddenly that dynamic changes. When we go back to the looking down, Carl does look kind of submissive, whereas when he's looking down and I'm looking up, he has all the power. It doesn't just work with a person either. You can do this with a motorcycle. As I've said many times, the best thing about being a photographer is getting to ride the motorcycles. And I've dug one of my Triumph Thunderbirds out, the shiny one, because I don't want you looking at a dirty, messy one, to explore this whole meek and powerful sort of thing. Let's get rid of my crash helmet. Let's chuck it over here out of shot, because you don't want to be able to see that, do you? Watch out, Joe, it's right behind you. Camera, please. Thank you. So let's see how this works. I'm just going to use a pretty standard, normal, mid-range focal length. What am I on? About 35mm, that's about 50-ish when you're on a full frame. Let's look at this with a video. It's the same thing as when we did this with Carl. Look, if we just look at this at eye level, it just looks kind of lost, bit meek, bit mild. But if we lower the camera, change our angle and start to look up at it, I'm not going to change the composition, I'm just going to change where the camera is in relation to the bike. Look, even just coming down this far at petrol tank sort of level, it just looks a whole world more interesting. It looks like we're equals. If we go even lower, right down to ground level and start looking up, you see, it's now gone into a much more powerful looking shot. Let's take a couple of stills of that so you can compare them. Here is our looking down, our kind of normal eye level picture. It's okay, but it isn't that exciting. Here we have got one right down here, low level. One I think is far more interesting than the other. Remember, when you're putting together a photograph, you need to think about the dynamics of it as well. It isn't all about camera settings and angles and just taking a picture. We don't take pictures, we make pictures. What do you want to say in your picture? Do you want to say power equals, is the subject subservient to the viewer, or vice versa? Always remember to move around. Try this out for yourself. Learn how to put power or remove it from your photos just by moving up and down. When you look at the world from a completely different perspective or point of view to the norm, it suddenly gets more interesting. Why is this? It's because when our brain sees something the same way we always see it, it shuts down and it goes, you're boring me, I've seen it before. So for example, when we're looking at a bunch of flowers, spring daffodils in the park, what do? We see them from sort of here, from this sort of perspective. Isn't that boring? Your brain shut down. It's just gone, seen that. It is so dull, it hurts. A different angle, a different way of looking at something can just wake it up. So if we sort of came down here, maybe if I got fairly close, here we go. If I focus on a daffodil in the foreground and shoot it from that angle, that is considerably better than the previous shot, isn't it? Utterly dreadfully boring. It's a bit more interesting. But come on, think. Use this thing. Ask yourself a question. How have I never ever seen a flower or a daffodil before? And then answer the question. You'll find a way to do it. My answer is, let's use a wide, short lens. How about photographing looking straight up like that, straight up through the daffodils? How about that? That would be different, wouldn't it? So let's do it. So I've got my lens wide, 10mm. How are we going to know where to focus? Because obviously you can't look through the camera because it's laying on the ground. Well, what's the distance? Look, from ground to daffodil is about that. So let's focus the camera at about that distance. That should be right. You can lock it if you've got a focus lock button. I'm just going to pop the camera onto manual focus so it can't change. Then what? How are we going to fire the shutter? Well, I want to make sure I'm not in shot, so I'm going to pop down here and go onto self-timer mode, 10 seconds. There we go. How are we going to see the shot? We're not going to be able to. This is trial and error stuff. Also, I want lots and lots of depth of field to make sure it's nice and sharp. So let's go for a small f16, which has got lots and lots of depth of field going on, so that we know we don't have to worry too much. Now we need a nice little clump of daffs. We can pop the camera down in amongst them. This looks good here. There's a little hole here in the daffs, so if I slide my camera maybe in under there, look, we've got a couple of daffs here. We've got stuff going on. With a bit of luck, it will see them all. Hit the go button and get out the way and see what the shot looks like. I'm just going to wait and watch from the little lights flashing, and it'll tell me when it's taken the picture. Might even beep. There we go. What does it look like? Now that is a whole world more interesting, isn't it? We've taken a really, really dull and boring picture and turned it into something eye-catching. We do live in a world of next, 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 and if you can make someone just pause for a moment, you've done a great job. You're going biking for the day, you want to take a picture of your mate coming out to get on his bike. Well, the obvious thing is you just kind of up with the camera and, you know, take a picture with the bike and pull. And I'm not saying that's a bad shot at all. It's okay. It's a sort of classical, normal picture. But it's also kind of forgettable because our brain goes, we've seen this sort of thing a million times before. So think it through. How else could we do this? How could we use our little bit of choreography, our dance with our camera, to make the shot slightly different, more eye-catching perhaps? Well, how about if we came down low, down here? We need to see the whole bike to know that there's a bike there. In fact, you can make something out of bits of shiny bike and headlights and things. You just got to move up and down, do that little dance, find the place where it all sort of fits together. Here we go. Now we have got Paul's pride and joy with Paul. It's just a little tiny bit more eye-catching. When you go out and take some pictures of some swans, for example, or some... Do you want some? Do you want some? I'd rather suck my finger. When you go out and try and take some pictures of some swans or birds and things, what do? We always tend to look at them from above, don't we? Come on, have some of these bad boys. Well, how about if we looked at them from a completely different point of view? And a phone is a brilliant camera to do this with because it's slim, it's tiny, and it's little. Look, how about if I was to turn that over like this and get myself ready and see if we can just get down really, really low here. Look, we've got a bit of... It's walked off. It's walked off. Come back. We can try a little bit of this sort of... Oh, look, we might get a bit of hot pigeon action. I think we're getting a few little shots in there. Look, you see, just by trying to shoot from a completely different point of view, I'm not sure what I'm getting because I can't really see. But what I really want is to try and get one of these swans with the sun behind. So we're looking up at that gorgeous blue sky we got up there. We got this dopey one here. This one's been sitting around for ages, and I've been wanting him to stand up. You can't be bothered. We've got loads and loads of our little gully pigeony things. How do I get rid of that? There we go. So let's see what we can come up with here. Come on, mate. Come on, every picture taken. Let's get that little bit of, I quite like that, with a bit of sun. That's sort of done it. I seem to be upsetting them all. Let's go over here and see if we can do a bit of hot swan action from over here. Let's see, come on, look, now that is a really nice kind of a shape there, somewhere. That, I think, was quite good. That is pretty cool. Assuming it's taken the picture, because I can't see a thing in the Apple Watch to tell me if it's taken a picture or not, but I think you get what I'm talking about. This is a totally different way to look at a swan. Let's see. Oh yes. Yeah, you see now they're just different. It's a different point of view, isn't it? It's a different aspect. And a phone can be a really, really useful tool for doing that. You can't do that with my Fuji mirrorless. You couldn't do it with a DSLR, or you might, but it's tricky. It's tricky. The good thing with these is you've got a little tiny lens and you can get it right down low, pretty much on the ground when you're going to shoot the picture. What could be less interesting than a no parking sign? The key to great pictures which are eye-catching is to photograph something in an eye-catching and different way. So here's a little exercise for you, and I want you to go and do this. That is to go and find something that's pretty boring, like a no parking sign, and then see how many ways you could look at it. See if you can find a way to make it a bit more interesting. How do we normally see a no parking sign? Well, you'd be sort of walking past, wouldn't you? You'd be somewhere around here, and you'd kind of see it, and then you just lift up the camera and possibly take a picture, and that would be unbelievably dull, wouldn't it? So how about if we were to zoom in on it a little bit and just kind of exclude some stuff and end up with just the sign near the top? Well, it's better, but it's not great, is it? By the way, if you're looking at my light meter, you can see that it says, almost says 2 stops overexposed. Don't forget, the camera thinks the world grey. That isn't, that's white. So you've got to adjust it, you've got to argue with the light meter. See, we're stacking all this stuff together still. What about if we looked along it? When did you last look along a no parking sign? How about if we were somewhere in here? That's a little bit more interesting already, isn't it? It's not exactly amazing, but if we have a look, we have progressed somewhat, if not a lot. What else could we do? Remember, focal length, it's in love with composition. So how can we find a different way? What if we shorten that focal length? What if we start getting shorter? Look, that lovely blue sky going on up there. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? We've got that tree up here. So how about if we see if we can bend our knees, look cool in the street? Look, that's more interesting already, isn't it? See if we can get closer, which will make the sign a bit more dramatic. Here we go, we'll focus on the no parking sign, and let's get the camera level. That is immediately more interesting. But look, what can you see poking up above the gate? There's a chimney pot, isn't there? Well, that's not so great, is it? Remember to look all the way around the viewfinder. So let's see if we can lose that chimney pot. So we'll get it focused up again. We just keep bending our knees. Look, the second chimney pot has disappeared. Let's see if we can get closer. Here we go. And that's pretty cool. What if we twisted the camera a little bit, make it a little bit more odd? Never be afraid to experiment. So let's have a little review. That is immediately a lot more eye-catching than what we've seen previously, isn't it? It's certainly taken it a long way from where we began. So that is a little bit of homework for you to go and do. Find something that's boring and see if you can find an interesting way to take a picture of it. Don't forget, Your camera takes shots this way up as well as that way up. You'd be amazed how many times photographers forget this. I've been on workshops in the past when someone has said, Mike, why doesn't this work? And sometimes it's just a case of turning the camera this way up. Most of the shots in this course are shot horizontally, but that's purely because they fit into the video in a much more pleasing way. Let's have a look at this. Shannon is sitting across the road on a bench against that lovely old wall. Let's take a couple of pictures and just see how this would work. So if I just pop her in the middle like that, there's nothing wrong with that. It is a nice shot. I'm not saying it isn't. We could, of course, move her from one side of the frame to the other. That's pretty good. Put her on the other side. That's not bad either. But look what's going on the wall above her. You see to the right, you've got that circle and that cross from the wall tie in that old wall. What if we turn the camera the other way up and then sort of balance the composition with Shannon and those things that are on the wall behind her? You see, that is just a lot more comfortable and easy to look at, certainly in my opinion. See if we can find a couple more vertical shots. Here's a scenario that on the face of it should be an upright shot, but actually it isn't. Look, we've got this alleyway. We've got these two sides that are sort of going up and down like this, and it makes you think the camera wants to be that way up to match it. But the thing is, it works better if the camera doesn't match it. Look, there's my mate Carl down the end. If I take a picture vertically, and I know the light isn't great, we've got Carl down the end. We've got this big, high, tall sort of alleyway. But when you then put the camera back into landscape orientation, I'm going to let Carl walk towards me. Look, what we're doing is exaggerating these lines going down the side of the alley. It's these lines which come down in this direction, thanks mate, which go off down here. Hold it there, Joe, and you'll see. Look, these lines either side are leading you back down the alleyway towards me. This frame is what works so well. So always remember, your camera does go either way up, but also remember sometimes the things that look obviously this way aren't necessarily going to work like that, and vice versa. The magical mystery of light. Light is wonderful stuff. Light is what will make or break a photographer's picture. You can have a less interesting composition of a less interesting subject, but if the light is really working for it, it will make an interesting image. Conversely, you could have the most beautiful model or stunning location, and if the light isn't working for it, that picture is going to be mediocre at best. This is a balance that photographers have to find. It's also about understanding quantity of light versus qualities of light. What do I mean by qualities of light? Have you noticed that during these introductions, the light has changed? In some of them, I look slightly different. Notice that? You see how some of these, it's just different. That's because we're doing this in a home environment, not a managed studio. And it's done on purpose, because I want you to see each of those different looks. That's because the qualities of light have changed throughout the day as we've been filming. This is what you're going to learn how to manage, how to get your head around, and how to control. Light is the most important thing. When we talk about quantity versus quality, for example, this shot was taken in very low light. There's just a few candles. But look how that beautiful light is wrapping round the little monk's face, how it's lighting up the Buddha. Just because there isn't much light doesn't mean to say it isn't really, really great light. And this is what you're going to learn about in this section, how to see light, how to recognize which light is appropriate and which light is inappropriate for a shot that you're going to take. And this is something we're going to be practicing a lot, because as human beings, we don't naturally see and recognize light. There's just light. Oh, look, there's Mike. We can see him. There's light. But remember, all those different changes in the qualities of the light throughout the day has made the image of me sitting here look completely different.